Read me a story, tell me a tale of fairies that sparkle and galleons that sail, princes and dragons, castles set high, tall magic beanstalks and witches that fly. Read me a story, an old one or new. Read me a story from you.
Oh, hi. Welcome to Read Me a Story. My name's Iain, and today's story is called Rumpelstilzkin. Once upon a time, a long time ago, in a land far away, lived a very foolish farmer and his daughter Matilda. The farmer was always bragging about how beautiful and clever his daughter was. People did agree that she was pretty and clever, but she was also very kind and shy. She didn't want her father boasting to everyone about how she could do this and was excellent at doing that. She warned her father time and time again that his bragging would get them into trouble one day. Now, the king of the land was very rich. He loved gold and just couldn't get enough of it. He had rooms full of it, but was always wanting more. One day, the farmer was delivering some straw to the palace when he happened to meet the king, who was taking a daily stroll around the palace grounds. The farmer took the opportunity to tell the king that although he was a poor farmer, his daughter was very beautiful. The king nodded politely and then turned to walk away. The farmer then called to him and said that his daughter was also very clever. The king stopped and nodded once more and then continued his stroll. Finally, without thinking, he blurted out that his very beautiful daughter was so clever that she could spin straw into gold. The king stopped in his tracks, turned around, and requested that she be brought to the palace at once. The boastful farmer hurried home and told his daughter that the king had heard how beautiful and clever she was, so the king wanted her to go to the palace that very day to meet him. When she got there, the king showed her into one of the rooms in the highest tower. The room was empty, apart from a spinning wheel, a stool, and a pile of straw. Nothing else. The king demanded that she spin the pile of straw into gold by morning and left, locking the door behind him. What had her father told the king now? She didn't know what to do. How was she going to spin all this straw into gold? It was impossible. The farmer's daughter just sat on the floor and cried. A few moments later, an odd little man jumped in through the window. With a hop and a skip, he approached the girl and said, "Beautiful girl, why are you crying?" She told him that she was ordered to spin the pile of straw into gold for the king, but she didn't know how to do it. The girl was afraid that if she disobeyed the king, she and her father would be driven off their farm and out of the kingdom. The funny little man thought for a moment and asked, "What would you give me if I did it for you?" The girl offered him her necklace if he spun the straw into gold for her. The odd little man agreed, took the necklace, and then sat down and started to spin. The spinning wheel whirred around and around. The straw flew this way and that, and in a few hours the pile of straw was spun into the finest gold. Then with a hop and a skip, the odd little man jumped out through the window and disappeared into the night. The farmer's daughter was so happy. In the morning, the king opened the door and was amazed at what he saw. The straw had gone, and in its place was the finest gold he had ever seen. The king was very pleased indeed. The girl then asked if she could go home to her father. But the king loved gold so much that he had an even bigger pile of straw brought to the tower at once. Again, the girl was commanded to spin the straw into gold. He left and locked the door once more. The farmer's daughter just fell to her knees and cried once more. But a few moments later, the odd little man jumped in through the window again. With a hop and a skip, he approached her and said, "More straw? Now what will you give me if I spin the pile of straw into gold?" She offered him her ring. He thought for a moment, agreed, and took the ring. The odd little man then sat down and started to spin. Again, the spinning wheel whirred around and around. The straw flew this way and that. And in a few hours, the large pile of straw was spun into the finest gold. Then, with a hop and a skip, the odd little man jumped out through the window and disappeared into the night. Once again, he had helped the farmer's daughter, and she was very happy. In the morning, the king opened the door, and to his amazement and joy, he saw the straw had disappeared, and in its place was a pile of the finest gold. The girl pleaded with him to be released and to be allowed to go home, but the king wanted even more gold. So he had the room filled with straw right to the ceiling, leaving her only a small corner by the window in which to work. Again, he demanded she spin the straw into gold by morning. He then left and locked her in. She was in despair. The girl sat in the corner and cried. A few moments later, the odd little man jumped in through the window. With a hop and a skip, he approached her and said, "Even more straw? Now what will you give me if I spin this pile of straw into gold?" The girl thought for a moment, and tears rolled down her cheeks. The farmer's daughter told him she had nothing else to give him. The odd little man then said, "Then you must promise, if you are ever made queen, and you give me your first child." The girl was certain she would never be queen, so she agreed and promised. The odd little man sat down and started to spin. Once again, the spinning wheel whirled around and around. The straw flew this way and that, and in a few hours the enormous pile of straw was spun into the finest pile of gold. Then with a hop and a skip, the odd little man jumped out of the window and disappeared into the night. The farmer's daughter was happy and relieved once again. In the morning, the king opened the door and was so happy to see another pile of the finest gold that he asked the girl to marry him and to be his queen. She couldn't believe it. She agreed, and they were married a few weeks later. The girl discovered that now that the king had all the gold that he wanted, he was actually very kind and caring. A year passed, and she was very happy living in the palace. She had forgotten all about the odd little man that came to visit her and the promise she had made to him, but the odd little man had not forgotten. And in a few weeks after the first royal baby was born, he jumped in through the window and demanded that she keep her promise and let him have the child. The queen refused to give him her beautiful baby and said that he could have anything he wanted. He could have gold and jewels. He could have a castle, anything. But the odd little man insisted that she gave him the baby. He said that was the deal. She had promised him that he could have her first child if she was made queen. The queen started to cry, and she pleaded with him not to take her baby. The odd little man felt sorry for her and said, "Well, very well. If you can guess my name, then you can keep your baby. I'll give you 3 guesses each day for 3 days. If you have not guessed correctly by then, I will take the child." With a hop and a skip, the odd little man jumped out through the window and disappeared. As soon as he had gone, the queen sent the servants all over the land to collect lots and lots of different names. On the first day, since he was such an odd little man, she tried some unusual names. She asked him if his name was Jehoshaphat, or Balthazar, or Zachariah. But to each he said, "No, that's not my name." Then with a hop and a skip, the odd little man jumped out of the window and disappeared. On the second day, since he was such an odd little man, the Queen tried some funny names. She asked him if his name was Norman Knobbly Knees, or Freddie Funnyface, or Trevor Tickly Tummy. But to each he said, "No, that is not my name." And with a hop and a skip, the odd little man jumped out through the window and disappeared once more. The Queen had only one more chance to get his name right. So that night she sent the servants out to scour the countryside. They had to try to find out this odd little man's name. Late in the evening, when the moon was full and the stars were shining brightly in the dark sky, one of her servants was drawn to a campfire in the middle of some dark woods. When she crept closer, she saw an odd little man dancing and skipping around the fire, singing, "Round and round the fire I go, the name the Queen will never know. Try as she may, she'll never win, she'll never guess it's Rumpelstilzkin." The servant rushed back to the palace and told the Queen. That was it. That was his name, Rumpelstilzkin. On the third day, when the odd little man jumped in through the window, he reminded her that this was her last chance. If she didn't guess his name, then she would have to keep her promise and hand over the child. The Queen very quietly asked if his name was Henry. He laughed and said, "No, that is not my name." She then asked if his name was Robert. He laughed again and said, "No, that's not my name." And then she asked if his name was Rumpelstiltskin. The odd little man was shocked and very angry. He jumped up and down and wanted to know who had told her. He insisted that she tell him, and he stamped his feet so hard that he stamped a hole in the floor, into which he disappeared, and he was never seen again. And so the Queen, the King, their beautiful baby, and the boastful father lived happily ever after. The end. Well, that was the story of Rumpelstiltskin. I wonder where he disappeared to. Oh well. Well, thanks very much for joining me on Read Me a Story. Bye-bye.
Read me a story, an old one or new. Read me a story. A story from you.
Yay!
Did you enjoy that? Well, if you did, click the subscribe button, and then you'll never miss anything from Cheeky Chimps TV again.